Hello.
Hey, everybody.
Thanks for joining us.
I'm Kim.
I'm Kathleen.
And we are here for Uncomfortable Conversations with the K&K Twins.
So this week we're
Yes.
starting a new unit.
Yes.
We're in the book.
Oh, here.
Untangling.
I'll use mine.
Yeah,
'cause I
mine's
have
all
mine.
through that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
mine. So actually, we're going to start a kind of heavy unit or
Yes.
lesson today. And that's going to be about hurt and anger, which we'll get to. But this is the book we are working from, Untangling Relationships by Pat Springle.
Yes.
You
And
see
you
that?
can go to McGee Publishing Company. If you go to McGee Publishing website, you can actually order these books at a discount.
Yeah.
So McGee Publishing.
Yeah.
You'll Google it. It'll be easy to find.
So before we start in with the next lesson, I'm going to do some kind of like review. I feel like so many of these things build upon each other that you almost need to review the basics several times just to kind of wrap your brain around it. So we're going to talk, okay, I can't see it, but you all, okay, you read what I'm pointing to.
I will read what you're pointing
Okay,
to.
so it all starts
That's
with these lovely dysfunctional
Functional
families, right? That we love and
Yes.
we're so grateful for. But they provide some challenges, and the challenges are.
It leads to three characteristics. One is a warped sense of responsibility.
I don't know. That might be
The
that
third
one, I
is
don't
the
know.
lack of objectivity, and then controlled and being controlled. And those three things lead towards certain emotions: guilt, loneliness, hurt, and anger. So this week we're going to talk about hurt and anger. Each of these units, we've been talking about each of these things. So you remember that we started with the warped sense of responsibility. We've talked about lack of objectivity. You guys, lack of objectivity is a big one. This is what's going to keep you from healing. This is what's going to keep you from really owning your stuff and figuring out that you are codependent and you need to deal with it, right? But those things lead to the guilt, loneliness, hurt, and anger, and that is what leads to a codependent lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So today we're going to talk about hurt and anger. In this unit, we're going to cover some things.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to talk about deep wounds. Day 2 is about responding to hurt and anger. Part 1. There's part 2, and there's part 3. That should tell you how important this is, how we respond to hurt and anger.
And how many layers it has. You know, we've talked about many times about how this is like an onion.
We talked about that here.
Yeah, we're talking about later too, but how it's like unpeeling an onion. And so we have to go through these layers to really get to the healing.
And then day 5 is going to be about memories, guys. So it's going to be.
Although you had some good memories today.
I did have some good memories today, so that's good.
Not all memories are bad.
Right.
Even not all memories with people who gave us bad memories are bad. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You have good memories, so that's just part of the process.
So we're going to start today talking about deep wounds. So I thought it was important that we share kind of this memory verse for this session because I thought it was really appropriate and it really fit. So I just want to share this Bible verse with you folks. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weaknesses, but one who has been tempted in all things as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore draw near with confidence to the throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and may find grace to help in time of need. That's Hebrews 4:15 and 16.
We need that grace.
I thought that was that was really comforting to me. So did you want to read? We have a definition.
Yeah,
Susan
I want to talk about the.
I don't know if you guys have heard of this book before. It's called Men Who Hate Women and the Women Who Love Them. It's a very interesting book, Susan Forward. But go ahead and read her definition of abuse.
Yeah, it's a book. Yeah, it's about abuse. So I'll tell you, this is a hard one for me. Like the definition of abuse. But here it is. Abuse is defined as any behavior that is designed to control and subjugate another human being through the use of fear, humiliation, and verbal or physical assaults. It is the systematic persecution of one partner by another.
Systematic.
They wear down their partners through unrelenting criticism and fault finding. This type of psychological abuse is particularly insidious because it is often disguised as a way of helping someone to be a better person.
Yeah. And I feel like I'm guilty of that with
Yep.
Abby. My mom for sure did that with me. The constant criticism, constant, unrelenting, beat you down. And it was to try and help me. Well, if I don't tell you these things, who will?
Right.
I say this because I love you. I want you to be a better person. I did the same thing with Abby to my eternal shame. I did some of that with her until I learned better.
Right. And we still have to catch ourselves.
Yes, we do.
I still have to apologize to my kids on a regular basis
Right?
for being myself and insensitive and carrying on these codependent behaviors that I've learned. And that's part of the challenge, is the things that were done to us, we end up doing to other people.
Right.
We repeat these patterns to other people, and we'll talk about later how we even abuse ourselves.
We're going to talk about that. So
we'll talk about that a little bit. But you want to talk about the results of this abuse?
The predictable results of such abuse are many. Okay, but we're just going to read a few. Self-condemnation.
Wait. Before you read them all, I want you to think about, as Kathleen's reading these results, think about, okay, which one of these resonate with me? And you might have to be honest with yourself.
Right.
And we're going to go back and talk about it again, but just start thinking about, okay, do I deal with self-condemnation? That was the first one. Okay, go ahead.
Right. And then, just codependents tend to stuff our feelings. We tend to not recognize our feelings. We deny. We don't feel it.
We don't feel it.
So let's just really be thoughtful about this and see if this resonates with you. So self-condemnation, lack of confidence. Those two right away are me for sure, or were me at one point. Tendency to be easily manipulated because we can't set boundaries.
Yeah.
It's hard for us to set.
That's a hard one.
It is.
Like for me, I had to really
am
I or was I somebody who could be easily manipulated? I don't like that one.
No one likes to admit that.
That's a
but if
tough
you
one.
have a hard time saying no, then you probably are. Morbid introspection, and that just means kind of being in your own head all the time. Rethinking what you said. Oh, did that sound stupid? Or what are people thinking about what I said? Or just really thinking about your life and, whatever. Just it's always about you and whatever. Passivity. So you're being passive. Lack of security. Rigidity. She wants to
Did you see her face?
She wants to elbow me in her rib right now. She does. So we're not doing that. Okay. Other emotional and relational problems. Okay. So think about those. This is going to be one where we're going to do some work together.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's really important that as you listen to this, you participate. Okay. So active physical and or verbal abuse leaves codependents feeling deeply hurt and angry towards their abuser. But the passive abuse of neglect and withdrawal are equally devastating. And I've had quite a bit of that in my life. The dysfunctional abusive family provides pain rather than healthy relationships. So keep that in mind, okay? They don't provide the love and worth that we need as codependents. Codependents try to please and rescue the ones who are hurting them in an attempt to win the love and approval that codependents so desperately need. So we are so desperate for love and approval that we try to seek that from our abusers.
Right.
And that's what keeps us in
Isn't that
abusive
crazy?
cycle.
I want you to think about that.
Right?
The person who's hurting us the most, who's causing the most damage, all we want
is to make them happy.
Yeah.
At the expense of ourselves.
Yeah. That just
Okay.
is like, it's insane.
Okay.
But we, do
So
what
we're
we
going to
do.
ask you to do an exercise with us.
Yes.
Okay. So there is active abuse and then there's passive abuse. And it's important that we recognize the difference between the two.
And
okay?
realize that they're both abuse.
Yes, exactly. Because sometimes passive abuse, we don't always label it as bad as active abuse, but it is. The results are still the same in terms of the pain and damage.
I remember feeling like, man, I wish, why is my thing doing that? I don't know. I wish he would just hit me. I wish he would just hit me because then everybody would know.
Yeah.
Then everybody would know. Because the passive abuse was so insidious and so secretive that it made me wonder if I was crazy.
Yeah.
But also, it's not usually done out in the open, so nobody knew.
Nobody sees it.
And I'm like, isn't it real? This is bad, right? Like I wasn't.
We don't trust ourselves in our own judgment anymore.
Like
that's part of it.
This doesn't feel right, but is it just me? So that passive abuse is just as much abuse.
Yep, it is. It's just as bad.
Okay, so we'll talk about passive and active.
So we're going to give you a list of abusive behaviors, and I want you to think in your head how you would label these: A for active, P for passive. Okay. So we'll read them a couple times so you can think this through. So for instance, name calling. Is that passive or is that an active abuse? Okay. Silent treatment. Active or passive? Disapproving looks. Active or passive?
Oh, I've been guilty of that.
Me too. Rage. Okay. Belittling comments. Verbal threats. Throwing objects. Slapping, hitting, physical violence.
I'm wondering, throwing objects. Could like slamming doors also be, you know, when you're like mad and you're slamming cabinets and you're slamming, like, you know, 'cause
Possibly.
you know, if you're throwing objects at people, you're not really, most people aren't trying to hit them. They're trying to show that they're angry. So I don't know,
So
just
maybe
throwing,
slamming
just
doors, that could be.
throwing out there.
So I'm thinking things like name calling.
Mm-hmm.
That feels active to me. That feels
Definitely.
like in your face active.
You
okay?
know that that's wrong.
Right.
There's no confusion.
Silent treatment. That
Silent treatment is
feels
passive to me. Silent
Yeah.
treatment is passive.
Passive.
It doesn't feel right, but there's
Right.
nobody outwardly doing anything to you. Mhm.
Disapproving looks, passive. That's just another
Totally.
way. So we don't always identify these as abuse. So think
Mm-hmm.
about this. If someone's giving you the silent treatment, my ex-husband used to do this,
Mm-hmm.
or disapproving looks. My mom was the queen. Rage. Rage is active.
Definitely.
That
you
is
know.
easily identified.
Mhm.
But that's why it's so tricky because
Yeah.
some aren't, right?
Right.
So belittling comments. I feel like that's active.
I absolutely agree that that's active. Mhm.
Verbal threats. active.
Definitely active.
Throwing objects. Active. If you're throwing things. Active. Slapping, hitting, physical violence, obviously.
That's
is
obvious,
active.
right?
Okay. Now, what about things like, are there things that you would add to this? Think about your own situation. What would you add? Like I added to mine emotional detachment.
Withdrawing love, withdrawing affection.
Yes, withdrawing
you know?
affection.
Yeah.
Mhm. Now, those would be passive,
Mhm.
and yet those could be devastating.
Definitely. Especially to a child.
Right? When you withdraw from them emotionally, that's horrific, I think. I
Yeah,
think that's
it's
terrible.
abuse.
Right?
But we do it. And I actually have to really watch this one, like withdrawing, because when I'm upset, I'm really working on like not lashing out verbally, not being overly critical. So I just want to like put myself in timeout and be by myself.
Like I was telling Kim tonight, I said, you know, I was having a conversation with someone that I so badly just wanted to give my opinion and tell them what I thought. And I thought, you know, shut up. I was putting myself in timeout. Just shut up. They didn't ask for your opinion. You don't need to fix them. You don't need to help them.
Yeah.
They didn't ask for it. They're not ready to receive it. Shut up.
That's a hard lesson.
So I had to shut
Especially
up.
when you've shared your opinion all the
All the time.
I know.
So for me, it was constant criticism and emotional
Yeah.
detachment and withdrawal. Those were the big ones.
But
for
I'm
me.
wondering, but like I really feel like I have to be careful because with my kids, we'll use them as an example.
Sure.
Sometimes I just don't want to talk to you. Like I'm really mad,
Yeah.
and anything I say is not going to be nice.
So you need to withdraw from the
So
situation.
I need to like not talk to you, but not because I don't love you,
Yeah.
but because I don't want to talk to you.
But it's not a prolonged thing, is it?
No.
If it's just in the
No.
heat of the moment where you
And
need
so
to give yourself space
Yes.
to formulate your thoughts.
So here's
that's
what I have to
different.
say. Look, you obviously I'm frustrated.
Right.
But I'm being very quiet, but it's not because I'm like mad. I just need a moment. Like I just
need to
need a
process.
moment.
Give me some
So
space.
I think
Yeah.
that's what I've learned is I just have to communicate.
Right.
That's the thing.
So you're not withdrawing love or affection
No,
from them. See,
but I
there's a
but I
difference.
feel like I'm withdrawing. Like I feel
Yeah.
like I need to, like I want to hide
Yeah.
I want to put myself in timeout. I want to hide in my
Right.
room and don't knock on my door and don't talk to me and my name is not mom.
Okay. Okie dokie. Now,
Her kid's 30-something. She don't
don't
know.
care.
She doesn't remember
I don't
what it's
know.
like to have
I
people
know.
knocking on your door.
I do remember not
to
being able to go to
ask.
the bathroom or take a shower. I want to just go in the bathroom and just sit. Because it was like, I don't want
Because
anyone
you don't want to be
I
mom.
don't want anyone to ask me anything. I would say, okay, you know what? I'm just going to go in there and sit down and
Exactly.
and just read a book or something. Just
Exactly.
and sit on the edge of the tub or sit in the tub, but no
I'm
one will
just
leave me
saying.
alone. Okay, so
Okay.
now think back to the results of the abuse that we read above. So self-condemnation, lack of confidence, tendency to be easily manipulated, morbid introspection, passivity, lack of security, rigidity, or any other emotional issues that you can think of. Okay, so think of that. What results did you find from your own abuse? All right, think of those results from your own abuse. What were the results of that? Okay, so for me, the constant criticism resulted in a lack of confidence. I just didn't feel confidence. And the emotional detachment left me with a lack of security, feeling like I didn't belong. You know, I didn't feel secure, a secure foundation within my own family. So give these some thoughts.
And for me, I would add self-condemnation to that.
Yes.
I was super, super hard. I'm still very hard on myself, but super, super hard because I felt so criticized. You know, we turn that abuse on ourselves and we start doing it to ourselves. So that self-condemnation is a big one for me too.
So think through that. Think through the results of abuse and think about some of your experiences and how that's resulted with you. Identify with at least, you know, you can... Pretty much all codependents can identify with at least 2 of those. Right?
Oh, for sure.
For sure. Maybe more. So
if it's only 2, you may not be codependent. Like you may just be normal.
Right. So it's really important that you connect the dots between the abuse that you suffered and the effect that abuse has had on you. Between your experience and the effect on you, the result.
Let me just stop here because if you're like me, you might be having trouble with the word abuse.
Right. We don't always think of these things as abuse. That's what we're trying to help. That's what this exercise is for.
And then that's the hard part. And you might be, if you're like me, you might be kind of stopped in your brain and go, well, this doesn't apply to me. I wasn't abused. So I just want to encourage you to take the lesson and not focus so much on the labels.
That's a good point.
Because you'll miss it. You'll miss it if you're so busy defending the abuser, which is a whole thing.
Yes, that's the whole thing.
Is a whole thing. If you're so busy defending and going, no, but I had a really great childhood. My parents really loved me, and I had everything I ever needed. You'll be so busy with that in your head that you can't go, but man, I really didn't feel safe, and I really didn't feel loved.
Didn't feel worth.
So I just want to just encourage you to just breathe. You might need to breathe into that one and just take a breath. And
I think there's an example in here of a similar situation with someone where, you know, outwardly their family looked great and healthy and all of those things, but inwardly there were other things going on. And she would have never, this particular person who shared her story, would never have identified this as abuse. She minimized everything that happened to her and felt like it was her. You know, she didn't realize that her parents hadn't parented her in a positive, healthy, functional way.
Which is, they're all doing the best they can.
They are, and it's true. But it does affect us. You see, we can't.
It does.
You know, minimizing it doesn't help because it doesn't allow us to really own it, work through it, face it, walk through it. So we've got to face it. So hurt and anger go together.
They sure do. Oh, they hurt too.
Right.
But those hurts are the result from not feeling loved, like we're just talking about. That is our desperate need as codependents, is to feel loved. And it comes from not feeling valued. And it comes from feeling abandoned, used, and condemned. Those are harsh words. I know.
Abandoned, used, condemned, not valued, not loved.
Not safe. And that anger is actually a reaction toward the source of hurt, because for every action there's an equal or opposite reaction. There's a reaction. So the reaction to that hurt is anger. The need for a sense of self-worth leads codependents, that's you and me, to try to rescue the very ones who have hurt them. That's what we do.
Make them happy.
So as a result, we get hurt as codependents again and again. And we don't know how to break the cycle. That's why we're doing this.
Right. We don't know how to break this. It's been going on for years and decades and whatnot.
Yeah.
But the other thing
generations.
Yes.
I'm watching this happen with people I love. That's been happening for generations.
Yeah. It's true. It is. And think about this. Anger is a reaction toward the one who hurt you, but it may not always necessarily come out actively against that person. It may somehow get buried and come out other ways, or you may take it out on someone else or something else in a different situation.
You may just take it out on yourself.
You may take it out on yourself, but you may overreact in a situation. It's not that serious because you have all that anger stuffed inside.
That misplaced.
And it's not safe to express your anger and pain to the person who's causing it. So you somehow, it's got to come out some way. So it filters out in inappropriate ways. So if someone tells you you have anger control issues or anger issues, it's probably because you haven't really dealt with the deep wounds and the
Yeah,
real issues.
if you find yourself flying off at
too
people
emotional,
and it doesn't match, like your
Yeah.
reaction doesn't match the infraction.
Like what happened?
Like,
So, yeah.
hold on, that
You're
didn't,
triggered,
that didn't match.
you know,
Yeah,
yeah.
you just got triggered.
Yep.
You need to talk to somebody. You can talk to us. It's fine.
Yeah, you can talk to us. That's why we want to go through this, because you guys, we would love for you to be here with us, sitting here with us, and we can talk and have some tea and whatnot. But anyway,
Oh, tea sounds lovely.
so yeah, we'd love for you to be here. So walk with us in this, and
Yes.
we'll do this together. So
think about somebody who's married to an addict or an alcoholic. Okay, it doesn't always have to be, but this is a very typical scenario. They tend to make excuses for them. They justify their behavior. They minimize their behavior, and they completely and totally enable their behavior.
yes,
If they always have a reason, it's because of this and because of that. So if the codependent tries to break the pattern by setting up a boundary or making the abuser accountable for their own behavior, like suffer the consequences of their actions, you know, the abuser is going to label them selfish. You never do this for me. You blah, blah, blah.
I'm
You
not
know,
asking that much.
right. I'm not asking that much. Okay.
Yeah.
The worst possible insult for us as codependents is to be called selfish. We are so selfless,
Yes.
which isn't
Not
really true.
but we think in our heads we are.
Right. We think we're being selfless, but it really is just because it makes us feel better,
Right.
which is a whole crazy circle in itself. And so we live as codependents by rescuing others.
We've got to fix people.
But
That's
not
where
for
we find
helping
our
them.
value is by fixing people.
But it's not to actually help them, it's to help us feel better about ourselves.
Exactly.
But then what happens? The codependent finally gets angry, resentful. We finally had enough, and we realize we're being used, and we realize we're being manipulated, but not enough to actually cause us to change our behavior. We just get mad and we rage, and it might be misplaced. It's not usually the person who, you know, is abusing us, but that's a whole other thing.
Right.
So this cycle kind of robs the codependent the ability to really objectively understand this tangled relationship. Because remember, we lack objectivity. We don't see things clearly. We don't see our situations clearly. We can see everybody else just fine, but we make excuses for, and we are in a lot of denial about what's happening.
And we may
in our
get
own
mad,
lives.
even if the person, like, think of
Sure.
a spouse who's married to the alcoholic, and they get mad. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not going to help you. But you still do it.
Yep.
And you do it over and over.
You make
and you're
excuses for
angry.
them.
But the abuser or the alcoholic or the dependent person knows that if they just let you rage and yell, they're used to it.
Yeah.
That you'll still do what they want. They
Yep.
just have to wait you out.
Exactly. And
Because you
they know.
develop this pattern of behavior.
Yes.
And it's very hard to break it. Very hard. It takes a lot of work and introspection.
And it becomes really this consistent and continuous twisted cycle.
It does. It's very sick.
It is, but we do it. And so the codependent continually rescues and fixes. And really what we end up doing is we actually prevent the abuser from facing the consequences of their own behavior. There's no incentive for them to change and get better in any way. So we're really...
I mean, why should they?
We're disabling them
Yes.
when we do this.
That's right.
And why should they change? Really, think about it. Their wrong behavior has no consequences.
No
It doesn't
cost to
cost
them.
them anything. They're not being hurt. They have everything they want. The only person that's being hurt is the enabler. And who cares about that person, right? We don't
Right.
care about ourselves enough to actually stand up for ourselves. Why would anybody else? But the problem is that this leads to dysfunctional relationship that's harmful for both people. One person is not making out here. Both people are dysfunctional,
suffering.
but we're all so blind we can't see it until we choose to.
Right. I think back to my ex-husband. This is such a picture because he was so manipulative and I just always remember feeling like I was being forced to do things I didn't want to do for him that he should be doing for himself. You know, you're a grown man, and I would get so angry and I would be like, I'm not doing this, but I would try to set boundaries with him. And he was one of those who, and this will happen, be prepared for this. When you do try to set boundaries, when you haven't set boundaries, they will push back with all their might. They will fight those boundaries. Just telling a dysfunctional dependent no is a challenge, man. It's like a red flag to a bull. They're going to push and come charging.
Yep.
So I remember really trying to stick to my boundaries And just some of the, no, we didn't used to fight until I started setting boundaries.
Uh-huh.
And then all of a sudden we were having arguments.
Life
Because I
is
just
great.
gave him his way.
Mhm.
I was just letting him, you know, it wasn't worth the fight. It wasn't worth the fight. But you know what? I lost myself.
Uh-huh.
And I lost my voice. And I became somebody who I wasn't.
Yep.
And so when I finally decided I've got to set some boundaries, and I do remember one particular time that I was done. Bill made so much more money than me, and yet he was always trying to borrow money from me. So after we were divorced, I think we were divorced here, he'd had an affair and he was with his girlfriend, right? So he's driving back from some gig because he was a he was a consultant. He was no, he was a consultant, and so he would go all over the country and all over the world now, but before working in the pharmaceutical industry. Anyway, long story. So but he was always broke. He made so much money and he was always broke because he couldn't manage his money. I made a quarter of what he made, and I managed my money way better than he did. So I managed to get my bills paid. But he was always trying to borrow money from me. So one day it was in the middle of winter, and we lived in Nebraska, or Michigan. And he went to Ohio for something. He was driving back, and it was a blizzard, and he ran out of gas money or something. He stopped by the side of the road, and he called me to see if I would call and pay for, I don't know, a tow truck or somebody to come and rescue him, right? And I said, no. And because I was determined, I had been working with a counselor to try and set boundaries with him. And I said, no. And he was like, Kathleen, it's a blizzard out here, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, boy, you know, sorry to hear that, but this is not my problem. And him saying, Kathleen, don't you understand? You know, like he was just really laying on the guilt. And I said, well, you know what? Why don't you ask your girlfriend? Maybe you should call your girlfriend. Maybe she can help you here, fix you here. She didn't have any money because she was spending all his. And so I said,
and yours, by the way.
And mine too, yes, that's the whole story. But so I said, you know, I'm sorry, I can't help. And just before I hung up, he said, Kathleen, I could die out here. I could die. It's a blizzard. I said, that sounds serious.
That's manipulative.
I was like, that sounds serious, click. And it was so hard though, and it was everything I could do not to call back and say, okay, you know what, I could find you, tow truck. And he was so furious that he ended up calling his sister, and he got her to pay for it because she's as codependent as I was with him. And so, but just everything that he tried, the guilt, and then the anger, is raging at me and telling me I was an awful person, and I, you know, how could I let, you know, our daughter's father, you know, and just like, oh my gosh, how could I, for everything he said, he didn't think I hated him that much, you know, that I wanted him to die and all this. And I'm like, I don't want you to die, but I'm not responsible for your gas situation.
I'm going to feel guilty.
You knew you were going on this trip. Why didn't you have enough money for gas money or for, I don't know, his car broke down. I don't know what it was. But anyway, so I did not help him, and he managed to find his way out. But another time I was thinking of is when he owed me so much money, and I had to go to court, and we had a court order for him to repay all this money that anyway, long story. So he owed me money, and he called me one time to ask to borrow money. And I said, why would I lend you money? That's throwing good money after bad. You already owe me all this money. No, I'm not giving you any money. Do you want to get paid back or not? I have a job opportunity, but I have to go to such and such a state to do it, and I don't have the money to get there. If you just pay for me to get there, I can do this job and make money, and I can pay you back.
That is so classic.
Isn't that that's classic narcissism and classic codependency, dependency.
Wow.
Luckily, I've been working with a counselor, and I said, no, Bill, I am so sorry. Actually, I didn't say I was sorry because she said not to apologize because my no is no. And I just said, no, I can't help you. You're going to have to figure something else on your own. Do you want me to pay you back? Well, I guess that's just saying that you don't care if I pay you back or not. Well, I'm not responsible for how you pay me back.
Right.
That's like, I said, Bill, that's like if you owe the bank money, if you get a loan from the bank and you go in, or you owe them money and you're going in, you haven't paid your credit card and you owe them all this money on your credit card and you go in and get a loan to pay the credit card. They're not going to give you a loan to pay your credit card, dude, because you haven't paid your credit card. So anyway.
But it's interesting because those things were tricks that he used to use to control you and manipulate you. Like that's what used to work.
Yes.
That's what used to work.
I would give in. I'd feel terrible.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, of course I'll give you money so you can get a job.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I need you to pay me back.
I need you to get a job.
I need you to get a good job so you can pay me back.
I need you to get a job. No.
Does that sound crazy?
He needs him to get a job, right? I just need him to pay me back. But how he does that is not my concern.
I know
it's
that was
not
hard
my
for you.
job to help him figure out to do what he needs to do. right?
Well, that's why I say it's like we're disabling people when
Yes. We're going to talk
when we
about
control,
that. Yes.
when we help them so much, and we don't give them the opportunity
Right.
to be able to take care of themselves. We're not helping them. We
No.
think we're helping them,
No.
but we're really actually
We're crippling them.
Exactly. We're crippling them. We're hindering them. We're disabling them, which it goes against really that's why it's not good for either
Right.
person.
And that's why they say that typically an addict or an alcoholic controls their codependent with helplessness and neediness.
Yep.
Because we need to be needed. And we need to rescue and help and fix you. So if they're helpless, we can help them.
Yeah.
Right?
And that gives
they
us a
use
feeling of self-worth.
And they use that against
Yep.
us. So codependents love nothing more than to be needed and to help somebody. But this need allows us to be easily manipulated. And this cycle leads to the codependent feeling used, manipulated, angry, worthless, lacking in self-confidence, and ends in self-condemnation. Think about that.
I would say, think about that. So the opposite behavior would generate an opposite response.
Ooh, that's
Right?
good. All right.
Right?
Let's talk about that.
So if we actually had boundaries and had people be responsible for their own behavior, we would not feel used. We would not feel manipulated or angry or worthless. We would have great self-confidence.
Right. Because
Isn't
everyone's
that
got their own
interesting?
boundaries and
We
their-
wouldn't be condemning ourselves. We would feel great about our decisions because we were doing what was best for us.
Right.
Huh.
Exactly. Think about that. We're going to talk about that more.
I
Because
love
I was
that.
telling Kim earlier tonight about this thing that I read about a guy that was talking about codependent, or I don't know who the other was, but anyway, about codependency and how it impacts the person that we're enabling. We think a lot about the codependent and the dependent person, and the dependent person, we think about it in a different view, but we don't think about the harm our codependency does to that dependent person. So I guess we can talk about it now. We're talking about it. Let's do it. So I was reading this thing. I don't remember exactly how I told you tonight, but I was reading this thing where this guy said, we're not considering the damage that we're doing to the other person. So he was talking about it in the case of a child, a parent with a child. So you have this child that you're constantly enabling. You don't teach them responsibility for themselves. There's no accountability. They don't have consequences for the wrong behavior. It's always somebody else's fault. Basically what you're doing is you're crippling them. You're not teaching them how to go out into the world and be a healthy, functioning adult. So they are learning from you how to manipulate, how to use, how to avoid consequences, how to be irresponsible, how to not take responsibility for themselves. And you are teaching them that.
Yeah.
So me as a parent am inculcating that in my child.
What was the word? Inculcating? Is that what you just said?
Yeah.
Oh, I never heard that word.
Okay, so
I like it.
We are planting in our children this negative, this sense that we don't have to be responsible for ourselves because mom or dad will fix it. They'll take care of it.
That's
so
this
we don't
whole
ever have
entitlement
consequences.
mentality.
So they don't ever have consequences. So what we're doing actually is we need to be needed so much that we're making our children needy. We're making these children need us to fix their world for them. And any time that we use somebody else and their need or their weakness to meet our own need is sick.
Yeah.
It's dysfunctional. So
yeah,
we're using
it's
their
abusive.
need for us to, fix their world for them. But what we're doing basically is abdicating,
I like that word.
Okay, is abdicating our responsibility as a parent because we've given up our
I know, big word.
our parenting role. You make fun of me.
I do not. I like them.
So, but we're just giving up our role as a parent. Our
Yeah.
role as a parent is to help your child become an independent, functioning, healthy
Self-sufficient
person
yes.
and leave home.
Yes.
And get a job.
Yes.
And buy a car. And do all the things that functioning adults
Yes.
do.
And
right?
raise other functioning adults.
Exactly.
Like to have
So,
functional
yes.
generations that keep
Right.
going.
And if you're continuing to enable them, especially when they go into an adulthood, that's just bad news. If you have, an adult child living at home with you and you're still supporting them, you need to maybe rethink that whole relationship because you're not helping them. You're not helping them. You're getting, it's almost parasitical because you're getting something
that's
from them.
true.
You're getting something out of them to meet your need, but it's not helping them. It's not for their best. You're sucking the life out of them. But,
And they're sucking the life out of you.
So it could be,
It
could
is.
be,
It's interesting. But, what's going to happen? Because let's say this is like a parent-child relationship.
Right.
Generally speaking, the parent, the child outlives the parent.
Mm-hmm.
So when the parent is gone, if you haven't created a situation where they're self-sufficient, what are they going to do?
But I see
You've
this.
made it so that when you're gone, they can't function.
Take care of themselves.
Like
They
that
So
should be
what
scarier
happens-
to you
Yes.
than them getting upset with you.
Because, think about that. Think about the person that always has to be in some kind of relationship because they're so afraid of being on their own.
Yeah.
They're so afraid that they can't manage themselves and they can't live their life because someone else has already fixed everything and done everything for them. They may get themselves into a bad relationship after bad relationship because they're so needy emotionally because they can't handle life. You have not prepared them to handle disappointment or rejection or no or all those things, right?
That's scary.
Or consequences of wrong behavior. So you're not helping, you're hurting. So if you're really hurting your children, you need to rethink your parenting. So
And we all need to rethink our
we all-
parenting
I
in some
know.
different
We've
in
already
some
done
ways.
that a lot.
Yeah.
So we've already done some of that. So we're saying that to ourselves.
Yes,
We've done a lot of it.
definitely.
So let's talk about
The layers of protection.
layers of protection, how we protect ourselves. Okay, so typically with the codependent, whether it's active or passive abuse that you've suffered, a great wall of anger exists. Okay, in our soul, deep in our soul, in the
Whether
soul
you
of the
realize it or
codependent.
not,
Yes.
whether you feel your feelings or not.
But we build these elaborate
Yeah.
defenses, these defense mechanisms around us to protect ourselves, to block the pain, and to avoid the anger. We want to control this anger.
Yeah.
So those kinds of things include different.
Well, the big one, I think, is denial. Denying the reality that's right in front of us, where we
do.
just pretend like things are not as they are.
Right.
That displaced anger we talk about, where we go out on rages and get really angry at people about things that
Don't even warrant that kind of
Yeah,
level,
they
that
don't
level of
match.
anger.
Sometimes we keep people at a distance emotionally, specifically. I think that was very much me. I looked very inviting and I looked very gregarious, but I didn't let people really get close to me at all.
Too scared.
I didn't trust them. I didn't trust myself. So that's a big
I had a
one.
lot of friends, but only a few really close relationships where people actually got in, got to know me.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have a lot of people
There's-
that I actually let in. I had a lot of friends and acquaintances.
Oh,
Go to lunch.
And everybody
dinner,
thinks I'm
whatever.
their best friend.
Yeah.
But
yeah. But
They weren't
inside,
really,
there's that wall.
yeah. We are numb to our feelings. We don't feel
This
our
is
feelings.
huge, and we'll talk about this
We've
more.
worked on this one a lot. And
Right.
we've kind of talked about our feelings wheel, like that is literally
Yes, we need to talk
on
about
my
that.
favorites on my phone because we went through.
I just looked at that the other day.
Did
as a matter
you?
of fact. Yes.
We went through a period where we were looking at it almost every day,
Yeah.
going, "Okay, what am I
Yeah.
feeling right now?"
Because yesterday not yesterday, it was last week sometime. I was going through something and I thought, what am I
feeling?
feeling? I don't like. I feel something's wrong. I don't
Yeah.
know what is this. And so I went through it and I thought, oh, okay.
You had to identify it. Isn't that wild?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's and that was a big one.
Yep.
Being numb to our feelings, being in control. If you feel like you have to be in control of everything,
And everybody.
that is a layer of protection that you've created for yourself. People pleasing. That's a big one for women.
We've talked about that over and over. People pleasing.
That's a big one. And of course, excusing the offender. We make excuses for the person who
are
is
experts at it.
oh, we didn't see things clearly. Like I
Minimizing.
remember one of my kids saying to me once, "Why do you think that just because he said that it's going to happen?"
Right.
He never does anything he says he's
Right.
going to do. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like I just was in such denial of the reality.
Right. Why do you believe that? He's never done that.
Yeah.
He said it 100 times. He's never
That's
actually done it.
obvious.
Right?
Like
Or
it's
things like-
obvious.
yes. Or
And I
things like-
couldn't do it.
I remember, I won't name names, but somebody that I know that their father was abusive, and I remember the mom saying, or her telling me that the mom would say, "Oh, but it's because he loves us. He loves us so much. He works so hard. He's just really stressed. It's because he loves us."
That's
well,
crazy.
She learned that love hurt.
Oh.
That love was abusive. That love didn't value. That love manipulated and controlled. She learned all the wrong things about love because her mom would say that all the time. It's because he loves us. He loves us. He loves you, but he loves you so much. But mom,
That's
you just
denial.
beat me, But he loves you. He loves you. So the mom was excusing the offender and not dealing with reality.
And she was probably doing
Exactly.
everything she could to please him.
Yep.
That's that people-pleasing
Pleasing
thing.
him. Mhm.
She was making excuses for him.
Yep.
She was in complete denial of reality.
Denying reality. Man was an abuser.
I mean, the things we do, and these defenses, they actually vary depending on the circumstances.
Right. You can do
know,
any
we're
number of
different.
them.
Yeah, different ones with different times, different people. But they have a purpose. And that purpose is to bring us short-term relief, because we need relief, right?
Right.
But it's not a healthy way. It's a short-term relief because it helps us block out the pain, at least momentarily, and control our anger, because that's another one for us. We want to be in control.
Yes.
So there's some modicum of control in our minds, but eventually we lose.
Mm-hmm.
We can't function in dysfunction and be healthy.
That's it. We
Plain
can't
and
function
simple.
with
We
functioning
can't.
healthy.
I just made that up just now.
That's great. I love it.
Thank you. These,
We just mixed it up.
I know,
It's so smart.
these same strategies that seem to protect us from the deep wounds and these tangled relationships, they also protect us from the actual healing process that the wounds cause.
Yes.
So when we don't see things clearly, when we don't accept the reality, when we don't create these boundaries, we will not achieve the healing that we need.
So if you have these defense mechanism in place, you're not dealing with the wounds.
Yeah.
You're not healing. Okay. The healing requires feeling.
Ooh.
It requires working through this stuff. It requires facing reality. It requires objectivity. It requires all the things that codependence lacks. So you've got to learn how to do those things, right? So you've heard the expression before about peeling
Yeah,
back
we're talking
the
about the
onion,
peeling of
right?
the
We
layers,
talk about
yep.
this all the time. The fresh air and light on our pain and anger will begin the healing that we need. It is painful, but it's the only thing that will work. It's the only thing that helps.
It absolutely is. But in that revelation, in that healing is freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can handle the pain because it's like having a scab over a wound. Like the initial wound is very raw and painful, but the scab is hard and tough and brings healing. That's what this exposure to the truth and this healing does. It creates a scar that hardens us, and not in an unhealthy way, but in a healing way.
Right, exactly. So often codependents grow up and continue to live in relationships characterized by manipulation, abuse, condemnation, poor resolution of conflict, and other behaviors that wound them deeply over and over. We continue these relationships. So you can think of the person that's married 3 alcoholics. Her dad was an alcoholic. Now she's married 3 alcoholics. We just continue this pattern.
Yep.
It's familiar. We know it, right?
It feels normal to us.
It does feel normal. And it's not. That's where we lack objectivity and we deny reality. It feels normal when it's not. So the reality of pain and anger is too threatening to codependents and to their important relationships. No one taught or allowed them to process their pain. When I was a child, I wasn't allowed to be angry. I wasn't allowed to express anger, and I really wasn't allowed to cry or express pain. My dad would always say, "I'll give you something to cry about."
I was just about to say that. Remember that? Yeah.
My dad was a Marine, and so we weren't allowed to have those kind of emotions in our house. So we just didn't have them. You just didn't.
Yeah.
And so no one taught me the joys of love and forgiveness. And in a codependent life, that doesn't often happen. Almost by default, their only solution for dealing with the pain of deep wounds is not dealing with them, but to repress them.
Yep. I
So,
think that's what we're
Kim,
taught.
we can talk about how hard it was for us to ever admit in the beginning that we were angry about anything.
For sure.
Or hurt. I would never say I was hurt.
Oh, no, that's
I'd
weak.
say I was angry before I was hurt.
For sure.
Because that is weakness.
Because hurt
But even being angry
feels like weakness.
wasn't accepted in our house. We couldn't get angry in our house. So I just was never angry.
Yeah. And so think about those things in your house. For some homes, anger is accepted. That's strong and powerful. But what were you not allowed to feel that you did feel,
But we weren't allowed to
learned,
express it.
right, you learned how to stuff it and you learned how to repress it. If you're going to work with us, you're going to work through those feelings.
Because everyone gets hurt and everyone gets angry.
Yes.
Everyone
Everyone
feels
gets
rejected.
scared,
Everyone
yes.
feels scared, yes. And if you can't express those things, they get stuffed and you either get numb to your feelings or they come out in inappropriate
Yep.
ways. So
true.
So we're going to
true.
wrap this up. This was just kind of covering some deep wounds and thinking about that peeling that onion. But let's do our summary
Yeah,
statements.
I was going to say, do you want to summarize? You want me to summarize?
Any behavior designed to control and oppress another human being is abusive.
Boom.
That's it.
Any behavior, let's say it again. Any behavior designed to control and oppress another human being is abusive.
Exactly. The passive abuse of neglect and withdrawal can be as devastating as active abuse. This is hard for us sometimes. If we don't come from a real traumatic history, our family of origin where we were beaten or sexually abused or, whatever, we may not identify with abuse, but we were indeed abused, okay? The elaborate defense mechanisms help the codependent control anger and avoid dealing with emotional pain. And we relate to that.
Yeah.
So think about that. Think about the last time you were angry. First of all, think about the last time you were angry. Were you ever angry? And when you were, what were you really angry about? Was you really angry about the little thing that you blew up about? Or was it really because of the underlying pain from something else that just kept accumulating until you finally blew? That's how I dealt with. Well, when things would bother me, I wouldn't say anything. I wouldn't deal with it, and then all of a sudden I would just blow up. And it would be like, well, why didn't you just say that back here when I did it the first time, not the 10th time?
Right.
So if that's what you do, if you just carry that until you finally blow, because it doesn't feel safe to be angry the first time.
No.
So you have to let it accumulate to the point where you feel like you can't hold it in and it's just got to blow up.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel safe to get angry.
We're not allowed to feel our feelings.
Yes.
We have to take care of everybody else. We
Right.
can't have our own feelings. So I know it's a lot. Hurt and anger, like we said, is heavy and there's many layers to it. So
we're going to keep working through it.
thanks,
Stick with us, you
Thanks
guys.
for joining us on this episode. Remember to like
and subscribe.
What she said. What she said.
Yes, like and subscribe.
And
so
we'll
we can
see
keep
you
bringing this good information to you. So
And we'll see you next time on Uncomfortable Conversations
Yes.
with the K and K Twins.
if you have comments or questions, post them, please. We'd love to see them.
Yeah.
Thanks, people. See you next time.
Bye.